Welcome to the first episode of Garage Insight, a series where I interview car collectors, get their opinions about the collection, and then actually get to see the cars move. In this episode, I met with Rick Barker, a self-proclaimed design junkie living in Danville, Virginia. Rick's collection of modern Ferraris resides in one of the most elegant clubhouses I've ever seen. Let's take a look. And after, we'll hit the track with Ferrari's latest V12.
I'm Rick Barker, and welcome to Casa Pelota. We're coming to you from the edge of the River District in Danville, Virginia. I acquired this property just a few years ago, and it was purchased originally in 1930 by Gulf Oil Company, and they built two buildings here in 1938. They built a small 2,000 square foot office warehouse, the space that's recently been converted to our clubhouse, and just across the courtyard there is a 4-bay garage, which attracted me to the property originally, and of course that housed the service vehicles back in 1938. For the longest time, this was Grogan Oil Company. After being abandoned for decades, I was able to purchase the property from the owners, and I have attempted to create a space that is worthy of the cars that I hope to collect. Early in the process, I reached out to Kevin Jones, who is a professor of architecture at Virginia Tech. We had worked together successfully on a previous project, and so Kevin helped me develop this dream, which is to have a clubhouse where my friends can hang out, with car talk, watching F1 races, playing games, the tournament style ping pong table behind us. That's a lot of fun, but it's also designed for reflex training. If I step into my career a little bit, I would tell you that I started earlier working as a commission sales rep for a large paper company. Not long after that, I began to migrate towards packaging, which I found to be less of a commodity. And packaging, because the solutions are often custom, one-of-a-kind made, it allowed for a little more creativity. Did that for the better part of 20 years when I had the experience and the confidence to create my own brand. So now for the last 20 plus years, I've had the great pleasure to live the American dream. Work 7 days a week, most nights, weekends, and holidays, and that is what puts me in a position to play the game that I play now. At the beginning of each design project, I always write a design statement. Interestingly, not about what the space will look like, but how the space will feel, how I expect people to interact within that space. So here, the earliest ideas when I'm collaborating with the architect was to say that I have a fascination with design. I'm a design junkie. And when it comes to cars, most notably, I prefer Italian design. And so I wanted this complementing clubhouse to what I knew I would be collecting in the garage. What the architect delivered for me was a neutral envelope. So you'll notice the walls, the ceiling, the shades, all white. Nice, crisp and neutral. We'll say modern Italian, if you will. In every case, every single color that is introduced into the space is a reference to a modern or a heritage Ferrari color, to be on message color-wise. You'll be able to note that a lot of the interior design cues are actually taken from automobile cues, most effectively Ferrari designs. When you enter the front door, you come under a chrome chandelier, because when I first started driving, before bumpers were rubber and fiberglass, they were chrome. We'll show you some walls that house some monitors, above which is perforated metal that goes from the top of the wall to the ceiling. Those perforated walls allows light to filter through, but the choice of material came from the perforated metal on the back of the rear mid-engine cars, which allows heat to dissipate. So it's just one design cue after another with hardware choices, color choices to try to echo auto design without doing something that's just very obvious. I don't want a Gulf oil sign, and I don't want an antique gas pump outside. I want something that's a little more thoughtful, a little more clever maybe, so that if someone comes into the space the first time, when they're here the third time, they'll notice something for the first time. We were able to work with a quarry in Italy to fashion the stone that you'll see in countertops in the kitchen space. They did a really fantastic job where we were able to take a 16-foot slab and actually book match it, which is the process of taking that stone while it's in the earth, studying the veins, cutting the stone so that it could be just right for a countertop. And then the book matching is when you take that 8-foot stone and open it up, it becomes a book match where the veins run all the way through the 16-foot space. The backsplash, it's book matched left to right, and it's also book matched top to bottom on the countertop. So it gives this appearance that it's just one monolithic stone, and you can read the veins through the entire stone. In the bathroom, we chose a terrazzo, a traditional Italian floor, but we found one that is about 50-60% black, rather than maybe the red and the Mediterranean colors that you might think of, and that created a really nice space for that room. Another thing I enjoy about the space is the display of my models. I'll share a quick story. My earliest remembrance of car fascination is when I was a kid, playing with Matchbox and Hot Wheel cars. And of all my cars that I played with on plastic tracks and in dirt, I had 2 cars that were my favorite. One, and I'm not making this up, was a red Ferrari. The other was an E-Type Jaguar. And so at 10 or 12 years old, I'm playing with these cars saying, one day I'm going to own one of these. And so it's particularly satisfying to get to the point where I could actually drive something like that. When it comes to auto design, most particularly Ferrari design, I think the golden age, the high standard for me is cars from the 60s. That's the design cues with which I most identify, most probably because I was born in the 60s. And then interestingly today, if you look at Ferrari design in the 2000s, in this century, from especially 2010 forward, I think we're going to look back on this period in 50 years and say this was a golden age, because it's just some superior design out there now. We'll share a car with you later that actually takes design cues from the 250 GTO that's just over my shoulder. We did a little variation on the red. We did a little variation on the blue seats that are inside that model, so that we can take these heritage design clues or references and bring them forward and do something that looks really, really modern, crisp, perhaps unseen, but still with an homage to something that came before it. And I think in all design, we can tie it to something, history, stories from the past, always makes it more interesting. Well, I'm fortunate to do a little bit of real estate work, and very often that work is historic tax credit projects. I am fascinated by architecture and the preservation of it. And so this built in 1938, this is actually maybe the newest building I've ever restored. And these are very simple industrial buildings, essentially just rectangles, just brick rectangles. And so when we step into the garage, different from this space, which is rather refined, I found that you can go a little too far with restoration sometimes. If you have an old building and spiff it up too much, then you essentially have a new building. And so while we have sort of a rather plain, simple, modest facade with garage doors, when we opened that, I left it bare, I left it rustic. It's decades of various layers of paint that we've scraped off, left it bare, and it looks kind of dingy. And I really like that vibe. I really like to have something that's sort of dingy, off of which something like a brand new car with a fantastic paint job can just pop and glisten off of it. Whereas if all the space were gleaming white with bright lights, it would just look like another showroom. So it's fun trying to develop a contrast in the space, the architecture, to actually make the cars look better. Out of the clubhouse now, I have a 4-bay garage with 5 cars, so we're going to start with one on the outside. This is a 2020 Portofino. This is entry-level Ferrari 5 years ago. A bit of a touring car. Design-wise, one thing I like about this car, white obviously, rather subtle on the outside. And then when you climb in the cockpit, you're introduced to this Ferrari red, a lot of it. It's a great interior, fun car. If the hardtop were up, it's black. Looks a little more aggressive with the top on, but it's nice to have both the open top along with the hard top, which is electric. And now we'll step over to the garage. You notice as I head this way, we have 4 garage doors, all 1938. And at some point, someone came along and cut a small man door inside, which we've painted red, added the word Scuderia, which is Italian for stable. So this is the stable in which I keep 4 prancing horses. Just before we step in what world, really, in what world do we get to have this much fun? I appreciate my good fortune. I could not be more grateful. And I really enjoy sharing this with Ethan and you today so that you can enjoy it with me. Let's step in. Okay, so I'm going to step ahead and cut the motion light sensors on. And let a little light and air in. Now that we're inside, you can appreciate that dingy quality that I mentioned earlier, and what these cars might look like on a rustic background. So I think I'm going to unveil these in the order that I acquired them, starting with the Portofino and here next. You're going to get to enjoy the same experience that I enjoy, for instance, when I come down here by myself on a Saturday. This is a ritual. I never come in, rip a cover off, jump in the car and roll. It's just the opposite. It's, I don't want to say it's religious, but I will say it's spiritual. So I come in, look at a car, I unveil the car every single time I drive it. The first thing I do is I come down here looking for that initial pop of color, and boy, is there one here. Look at that. So this is the F8 Tributo Spider. This is the first car that I got to specify. So I spent a little time in the design rabbit hole coming up with all the options for this car. And for the things that I wanted that were not options, we talked to the factory and they agreed to custom fabricate some parts just to my taste. Let's begin with the color. This color is Giallo Modena. Giallo meaning yellow in Italian. Modena is the town where Enzo Ferrari was born. And if you ever have the opportunity to go to Modena, you would know that the city, the town, the village flag is yellow. And so for all that's made of Ferrari red, the very first race car that had a prancing horse on it was Giallo Modena. That's why I chose the color. Let's touch on a few design keys. Obviously, this is a very aggressive looking car. If we step into the interior, you see it's all black with complementing yellow leather interior. Some of the exterior defining features of the F8 is the one big thing that gives an F8 away over a 488, 4588 that are sometimes confused, is this hole in the hood. So imagine with this hole in the hood, if I dropped a quarter right here, it would fall out of the front of the car. So that design feature is designed for air to go into the front vent to come out of the hood, which creates downforce on the front of the car, which expands the width of the tires and makes the front end really, really sticky on a track at speed. If we come back, I'll show you the nice feature that in the mid-rear engine model, we can tilt the lid, and it's hard to see all of the engine because it is placed so far forward. So imagine versus a front engine car, this engine, the power plant is right over the rear axle, and it's a beast. 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds. So in supercar parlance, anytime we get a sub 3 second 60, that's a big deal, and this one comes in at 2.9. I spent a lot of time on the design of this model because it was the first opportunity for me to actually specify a car. And so that process is meeting with your Ferrari dealer, looking at all the options, and then they can put that in a configurator so you can see a digital facsimile of your choices where you can change wheels, change colors, and there are quite a few options. And so I went through those. And then when we were looking at the configurator, we designed a great steering wheel, a great dashboard, all of which was mostly black with a little yellow accent. And then there was something on the steering wheel I was a little uncomfortable with. It was a lighter colored plastic gray that I just didn't love. So I asked the dealer, I said, would it be possible to fabricate this in metal and paint it gloss black? And instead of saying no, he said, let's call the factory and ask. He called the factory while I'm there. They said yes, and that became a special feature that makes, a little small element, a little small detail. Almost no one would look at that steering wheel and notice it as being different from another, but it's sort of perfect for me because that's in my visual field when I'm driving, looking at that steering wheel. So that was a lot of fun. Now we're going to step down to the Roma. Now the Roma represents a departure in the design language at Ferrari. This is my wife's car. We mentioned earlier that my wife drives, Kristen, and so I'm going to introduce you to her car. And I think this is a fine spec. Again, we'll unveil the color. And you're probably expecting some dramatic Ferrari color, and it's not. This color is called Grigio Ingrid. And so versus the bright yellow F8 that you just saw, that's very dramatic, it has a lot of contour, this is nearly just the opposite. This is akin to the new design aesthetic, which is more of a minimalist interpretation. You'll notice here more subtle contours, very simple, but very elegant. And historically, when you bought a Ferrari, you were buying an engine. You weren't buying luxury interiors and you weren't buying comfort. But over time, that's changed. And this is a very comfortable car, appointed with very luxurious accents. And I'd love for you to see the interior. See, the cockpit has that large console in the center that essentially gives a passenger a nearly equivalent cockpit to the driver, with a brown leather interior with some black Alcantara highlights. This, I think, is going to be known ultimately for its very simple lines. In this body style, I can say not every color looks good on this model. And I think this simple gray, which just essentially highlights shadows, is really well done. Now we're 3 down, 2 to go. So now let's step over to the 296 GTB. Now you'll see that the cover has only partially covered the car because I had to leave room for the electric port. The 296 GTB is a 6-cylinder hybrid. This color is a special edition color. I think it's a fantastic blue. We've advanced from 611 horsepower in the Portofino to over 700 in the F8, and now we come in at 820 horsepower combination of combustion engine and the battery. You can see I have a number 7 on it. That's left over from a track day at VIR. My home track is Virginia International Raceway, one of the longest road courses in America, and I would recommend that track to anyone. And then if we can turn around and get a shot of the interior, it's fun. It's another pop of color. So not always does the exterior color have to deliver all the dramatic appeal. I'm not sure what you would have thought if I said, hey, we're going to do a blue car and the interior is going to be bright orange leather. But here she is. And so what this reminds me of is the Gulf logo. You've seen all the Gulf liveries in orange, and so I would say this is a bit of a tribute to that. Another fun component in the rear, tinted glass through which you can see the engine, which is very nice, but we're going to open it so you get a good look at it. So you may be aware that all the orange cabling is always associated with the battery power. If we come behind this, this is a lot of fun. There's no other way to describe the F8 and the 296 other than to say it has a really good ass. This looks good from behind. It's fun following this car if you can't lead it. One thing that's hard to show while the car is sitting still and not cranked is this item. So this is an active spoiler. When I have this car on track, if I need just a little downforce, this spoiler will come up 1.5 inches, and that provides a little downforce on the rear of the car. And then when I'm at speed and slam on the brakes, then that comes up 3 inches. It behaves more like a parachute to help slow the car down. One thing I like about Ferrari is, for all you can say about this exquisite design, without exception, its form always follows function. So all of these little creative details that look really amazing is only there to achieve higher performance. And so if you look at the two cars now, between the two, I can point to all sorts of little design features, one that you wouldn't notice. So here's the headlights, but you didn't see this hidden vent. So that little hidden vent there is getting more cool air to the hot brakes. It's all sorts of little clever ideas like that that make these cars exciting. Probably a good place to note that the F8 is part of the trilogy that started with the 458, then to the 488, ultimately to culminate in the F8. And the 458 was the first car that Ferrari designed in a wind tunnel. So this shape, this design is literally sculpted by the wind. One thing that's fun that I noticed from the time I started washing my car is on these two cars, there's not a single square inch of flat aluminum. Everything is a curvature, no flat metal. Very sensuous. In fact, I'll tell you a quick story about washing my car. So after I'd worked with the architect to complete the building, we'd gone through construction, we put the furnishings in, and so we were done, which created the next Saturday would be the first weekend that I could come in by myself to enjoy the space. And so I come in, I open this door, I pull the car out, and I wash the car. Simple task, right? Washing a car. Except before that day, I'd not washed my car in over 20 years. So I took a moment, I took a picture of my clean car. I texted Kevin Jones, the architect, just to share with him that I just washed a car for the first time in 20 years. And then his response, and I'm paraphrasing, was something on the order that he was glad to participate in a project that he understood would change my lifestyle. And so now I've got a really convenient place with all the supplies to clean cars. And so now I don't want anyone else to wash my cars. I want to wash them myself because it's the way I get to know the car. Just 2 weeks ago when the 12th cylinder was delivered, it was delivered in a covered truck from the dealership. It was spick and span, it was clean. The first thing I did was wash it, because when I wash it, I get to put my hands on it. I get to touch every contour. I get to understand the car better. I get to appreciate the designers in Maranello who created these designs. And I'm sort of reverse engineering it. I'm looking at the design, trying to understand the engineering behind it. Because while I'm a design junkie, and I'm talking today all about aesthetics, if you really want to get to know these cars, you can't do it without appreciating the engineering. So these are all high performance cars. And you can't drive these cars before you train to drive these cars, to begin to exhaust any of that engineering capacity. I'm not a gearhead, I didn't grow up with this, I'm coming to it late. And now I have a new subject, high performance cars. And I'm studying engineering for the first time to understand what can be done with these cars. And so when I talk about this interior design and being fanatical about getting every little thing right, you know, imagine this. When I'm sitting in the car, there's only 3 parts of my body that touches the car. My hands are on the steering wheel, my feet are on the pedals, and my butt is in the seat. And so at VIR, I'm going around the track, and these are 3 points for feedback, to collect data points, to improve my driving. So you go a couple of laps and you realize what part of the track has the best traction, where it might be a little slippery, where there's a crack in the pavement. And every time I get a little vibration, you know, maybe in my butt, is that due to the track, or did I come out of that curve too late and it's a little stressful on my body? So you take all that feedback, curve by curve, lap by lap, you calculate all that into getting faster and faster and faster, so that then by the end of your session, this is not machine versus man. This is machine integrating with man. At the end, when you iron out those kinks and you sort of get in the zone, then I'm dancing with the car. I can hear the music. I never ride with the windows up. The windows are always down. I can hear the engine. And then it becomes intuitive, where I'm dancing with the car in the curves. I'm putting it where I want to put it, and it will take me where I want it to go. And I think that's the height of a driving experience, is to sort of get in that zone and lose yourself. And it's pretty easy to do in these cars. Okay, so now we come on to the 5th car, the 2025 the Dolce Cilindri, the 12 Cilindri. Very special car. Friends from the beginning ask, oh, why isn't your Ferrari red? Well, we have a white one, we have a gray one, a yellow one, and a blue one. So you probably guessed, this one's red, but not any red. It's a very special red, a very thoughtful red, in that most Ferraris are Rosso Corso red, a very popular bright red. But I found a car in the 1960s that I like. I think it won a Tour de France race in the 60s, and it was a dark red, a dark, rich red. And so when I worked on the design, we started with that color. We started with Rosa Fuoco, and then took that color. It's been modernized by adding metallic to it. This is a big car, a lot of paint. If you get this color wrong, you might have ruined the experience. And so I'm pleased to show you one of the first customer cars in the United States. This came out not too long ago, and glad to share it with you. When I said I was saving red for a special color, this is it. Unlike the others, you can see the shape. Very long nose. That's the 12-cylinder engine. It's a 12-cylinder front engine. But this is in keeping with, I'll say, Ferrari heritage. Ferrari heritage began and continues to make 12-cylinder engines. I love that heritage. I love that I have an engine that is associated with Formula One and the most elite race cars in the world. Looking at some of the exterior design elements, for those of you who are familiar with the Daytona from the 60s, you'll see a similar front end. This black portion is not optional. That's black on every car, but a little reflective of that Daytona heritage. Love the vents in the top. You have to get a look at these wheels. These aluminum wheels are carved from a single block of aluminum. Coming down the side, I can show you the contrast. You probably have seen the enamel badge that is on most Ferraris. and you'll see what size that is. And now there is an option at the factory to sort of go old school and do this the old way. As a special option, you can choose to have an artist at the factory hand paint the logo. And here's an example of that. I thought this car was big enough to allow for that, because when you hand paint the logo, it's larger than the one we just saw in the F8. So see, that's almost the size of my hand. And I'm told that it takes an artist about 8 hours to airbrush this. So that's a fun detail that's different from the others. We're always looking for that contrast between the interior and the exterior. And so after I chose this sort of heritage-inspired dark red color, I went for a bright blue interior. And so this leather is called Santorini Blue. And it looks pretty special to me. It really pops. Once you get this car in the sunshine, it's a lot of fun. The top is black glass. This is a panoramic glass, so from inside I can actually see through that. And when designing this, we decided that the top half should be black, so when we did the black top, then we also made the mirrors black. The mirrors are usually body color, in which case they usually just disappear, and here they actually stand out, which is fun. Now as we come to the back, this is the, I'm gonna say either amazing or controversial design feature, depending on your preference or your taste. Most probably taken from aviation design, is this delta wing shape that's on the rear. So this is sort of fun, and this, unlike most Ferraris, there's actually a little bit of room in here. So we'll open that. If I take enough of the accessories out, you can actually put a set of golf clubs in here, amazingly. Ferrari with a set of golf clubs with the top still on. Another fun thing that Ferrari does, which is I think is really cool now, but it'll be important later, is that when you design a new car, they take all of the options and build a plaque and put it on the car. So imagine that 30 years from now, when someone's looking at this car, they can go to the plaque and determine what on the car is original versus not. This with the understanding that when you buy a Ferrari, the base price includes a rather base model. As I said, when you buy a Ferrari, you're buying the engine, and they say they give you the car for free. And so it's nice that they have a lot of options that can create, essentially one-of-a-kind liveries for their customers.
This is the first 12-cylinder that I've seen on track. Rick's first time taking it on track. Let's see how it is.
I didn't tell you in advance, today's my birthday.
Hey, she told me. So you're playing it cool.
Yeah,
I heard.
This is like a perfect birthday.
Oh, this is great.
Take the day off and spend it at the track.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I'm not gonna break that one. Good?
Good.
Right.
Thank you so much. Holy cow. You can feel it kind of heavy in the corners, but it still is, it's still agile, you know?
Yeah, actually, hey, not as agile as 296, but way more agile than you would think.
Right. 100%. You see a car, like any car this size, and you just imagine the handling, and
Yeah,
this is...
you should have come through turn 3, right?
No, that is wild.
Pretty doggone car you got there.
Thank you, thank you.
I've been hearing wind about it on the radio.
First time on the track.
Now, what model is this?
So this is Ferrari's latest 12 cylinder. So they call it the Dolce Cilindro, which is the 12 cylinder.